Did the presentation at UVA-Wise, and we had 181 people attend. This past May, we did it down here, and we had 300 attend. So it was a wonderful class. We had law enforcement professionals, community leaders, we had pharmacy techs, we had pharmacists, we had doctors, nurses, we had lawyers, and law enforcement, as I said. So we were asked to repeat it, but expand it. So we're doing it again November 15th. So we're focusing on synthetic narcotics, but also the opioid problem, because that's a huge factor right now. And I can get by with that, even though it's a synthetic grant, because one of the biggest synthetic drugs that we're having a problem with is synthetic fentanyl. And you all have heard of fentanyl or fentanyl, whatever you want to call it. Fentanyl is something that we're seeing more and more of. And I actually had a class today from a drug enforcement officer, and he actually talked about fentanyl and how dangerous it is. So I'm going to talk to you guys about synthetics and the fentanyl problem that we have, and then we're going to lead into a Revive training, which is a naloxone class that I'm going to teach you guys too. And I'm going to certify you to carry Narcan, and also give you a card and a paper that you'll be able to go to the health department wise, and they'll give you 2 free doses of Narcan. So sometimes I call it naloxone and sometimes Narcan. I'm tired of seeing you say it Narcan a lot. So naloxone is just a bigger word. It's hard to get off the tongue. I brought some actually show and tell things about synthetic drugs, but if you've got some of the things that I passed out, you go ahead and sign in right here. Yeah. I've got some things about synthetic drugs, and I'll explain to you what they are. They are just basically drugs that man has manufactured to mimic other drugs. And synthetic opioids were made to mimic morphine, okay? That was one of the drugs that was made to mimic. But it's also made to mimic what we hear of as heroin. So the synthetic drugs that we used to see 5, 6, 7 years ago, you guys know they sold it in grocery stores, they sold it in gas stations, and here's your papers, you can get the rest of this one. They sold it in gas stations and anybody could buy it because it was legal. What happened was China started shipping this crap over here from China, and it was just manufactured and was laced with all kinds of chemical compounds that was very dangerous for human consumption. And they tried to get by with that by putting on there it's potpourri. It's not for human consumption, and they were able to sell it. Well, people were getting it and smoking it, and some people were dying the first time they tried it. And they also were targeting young kids. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and I'll pass this around. It is sealed. You might get a whiff of something sweet. I'm sorry, but it's not going to hurt you. It's not something that's got fentanyl in it right here, or I wouldn't have it. Every now and then you kind of get a scent because it comes through the plastic. But they try to market it to the children. So you can see some of the stuff that they put on the packages. And this is synthetic marijuana. So you've heard of bath salts. Some of y'all heard of bath salts. So some of this stuff that you see here, you may see one with bath salts in it. All of these are sealed. So these were seized in a drug bust called Up in Smoke. And we actually conducted simultaneously drug raids at 12 in Southwest Virginia, 1 in Texas and 1 in Florida at the same time, because those were distributors. And so at the same time, we had about 90 agents, and I got to help with it, that we actually were part of. I'll just pass these around. There's 3 different ones, so make sure you get a chance to look at all 3 of them. If you pass that back. We all worked together, and we busted the places at the same time. And the reason we did that was because they were going to call each other in the morning. So it was a very lucrative business because they get it really, really cheap. And sometimes they would remove it from the packages, cut it with something else, repackage it and sell it cheaper, and make more money that way. Or they'd get it in large quantities and package it themselves, period. There's one package in that one there, it's got some loose product in it. It looks just like cigarette tobacco. So what they were doing, they were trying to addict the people in the United States as much as they could. It was really popular here. So the state of Virginia decided to pass some laws, and they outlawed some of the compounds. Well, that didn't matter because China just tweaked the compound just a little bit. And they would change it, they'd sell it again with a different compound. It took them about 4 years to figure out to call it analog. And analog is anything that is trying to mimic another drug. So that took care of all the compounds. And so it is illegal for synthetic drugs to be sold, possessed. So anything that you are taking to mimic another drug, you actually can be charged just like you would be charged with possession of marijuana. So it helps us out a lot. Now, when we send it to the lab, they don't know what all the tests were because there's so many compounds in there. So when they get a hold of it, they, just agree it's an analog. So that's all they have to do. If there's something suspicious about it, that it has something that's even more dangerous in it, like fentanyl, then they want to test it, but very carefully, because fentanyl is a powder form. And how many of y'all heard of Duragesic patches? Pain patches? Duragesic patches have been around for a long time. And I remember several years ago when Kmart was still at the shopping center where Ollie's is. Well, not Ollie's, what is that, Harbor Freight. When Kmart was there, they had a break-in and they stole a bunch of Duragesic patches. And just a couple days later, there was a lady on the courthouse steps, and she had her head between her legs, and she was drunk as she could be. So I knew I was going to have to arrest her for drunk in public. So I took her up to the office to arrest her, and she kept getting more lethargic. We called for an ambulance to come and check her out. And by the time the ambulance got there, her pupils were pinpoint. And so I tilted her head back to kind of open her airway up, and I see she had something in her mouth. So she was actually chewing on a fentanyl patch. And then it was sort of a gummy substance on the patch, sort of like the nicotine patches that you see. And so she was chewing on that, and ambulance got her. They took her, gave her Narcan at the hospital. She perked right up. The next week, she did the same thing, but no one was there to save her. She died. And we had several people that had overdoses from that theft, and we think that's where it came from. We actually had grandmothers that years ago when they were doing the Duragesic patches, we had a grandmother that overdosed, but she was saved, but she put the third pain patch on and forgot to take the other two off. Didn't know she was supposed to take the other two off. So, we have problems with that. But it's actually given quite frequently, so you may see that, later on. Now, what has happened in our area, since they have banned the synthetic drugs from selling out open in a grocery store or in a gas station or in a little building outside your house, however people are selling it, they're selling it in their homes, or they're going from hotel to hotel to sell it underground. And they operate through social media. And when a drug dealer has their product, they want to have the best product so they get the most customers. So they started basically spiking the synthetic marijuana with fentanyl, and usually the gel from the Duragesic patches. Well, China started selling powdered fentanyl to us very readily. You can order it off the dark web. Very inexpensive. Just a very few micrograms can give an overdose. Fentanyl is a very strong product. Morphine, if you've ever had morphine for pain, it's meant for somebody with serious pain or somebody with cancer. And through the years, they try to improve on what's available for people to help them with their pain. And so morphine and opioids are developed from the poppy plant. And the poppy plants are grown in other countries. If you've ever seen the poppy field, and I think the Wizard of Oz, when they're all going through the poppy field, it kind of makes me laugh now because they all fall asleep. But that's basically what it was. The poppy fields, when they grow the poppies, after the flowers fall off, the little buds that come up, the farmers would go in and they would score the hard buds and kind of do a scratch in them, and they'd start oozing this substance out, this gooey, sticky substance. And then they'd go back and they'd peel it off, and that's your black tar heroin. So they would cut it down, and that's also how they developed, morphine and other opioid drugs. So when a drug dealer gets it, it's very expensive. So some black tar heroin would be cut with something else. Well, then recently they found out that fentanyl is a cheap way to cut that heroin down, so they can cut it and use it in different ways. But it's not as easy to control. So they'll mix the powdered heroin and the powdered fentanyl, but you know, they're not scientists. They might put a little of this and a little of that. Oh, let's give them a little more of this. So whatever they mix, it's what you're getting. So it's not controlled by the DEA, so it's very risky. The people that are just normal people like you and me that were not addicts, you know, we might take a little bit of it and we would be overdosed. But then your regular opioid users, they want a little bit more. So that's why they're trying to produce something stronger with the synthetic fentanyl. And it poses a big problem for us because, number one, it's very dangerous. It can be absorbed transdermally through your skin, through touch. Also, if it's powdered and you breathe it in, you can become overdosed. So recently we've been hearing a lot in the news about officers getting secondary overdoses and their partners saving their lives. And that's why we are starting this program with Revive, and I have trained our officers and several other agencies to carry the Narcan. Not only can they save somebody else's life, but they can also save their partners, or their partners can save them. Since we have been carrying this, we have had 2 saves. They both came from Coburn, go figure. One of the first one was a young man that was smoking synthetic marijuana that had to have been laced with a synthetic fentanyl or some type of opioid because he was smoking a synthetic. And the reason I know that because the Narcan would have not helped him. It does not bring you out of a synthetic overdose, with the exception of synthetic fentanyl. But it may take extra Narcan to bring you out of that overdose. So when his mom found him face down in the floor in his vomit, she called 911, and one of our officers was driving by, heard the call. He was right there at the house. And I think it's just, you know, very, very fortunate he was there. She grabs him, runs up there, and he realized there's a marijuana pipe or whatever he's smoking. His mom grabs it and throws it under the bed. Don't do that. We need to know what he's doing. And he rolled him over and was able to administer Narcan to him. In 2 minutes he was sitting up. In 10 minutes he was able to walk to the ambulance. And I'm not sure if he had to have more doses after he went to the hospital, but he did. About a month later, we had a young lady that was under arrest from Coburn PD. And she must have taken something before she left her house because, you know, they didn't find anything on her. But when they got to the processing area, they actually, she asked to go to the bathroom, so they let her go to the bathroom. She went in the bathroom, they heard her hit the floor. So they opened the door and they dragged her out. And obviously something has happened to her. She didn't have any needles, she didn't have anything that she did in there. I think what happened is once they arrested her, it finally kicked in by the time she got out there. And so our guys had the Narcan and they administered the Narcan and saved her. Unfortunately, she was on a ventilator for 4 days. Didn't think she was going to pull through, but she pulled through, and now she's in the regional jail. So this is something that I feel very passionate about. Our sheriff felt very passionate about, and he really wanted us to get trained in it, and he wanted to make sure that officers had it. And I got a little bit of push from our officers, so I'm going to give this stuff out to you guys, and this is basically the same training our officers have. We also train in the public. But when we try to stress to everybody, not only could it save somebody that you are out there trying, you know, responding to an overdose call, but you could possibly save a child or yourself. You have that. And recently we had a call in upstate Virginia, had an incident in Stafford County, and the individual was actually helping with a vehicle search. And he was helping another agency, and he stopped to help, and the guy was under the influence of drugs, and they arrested him, and they were doing a search of the vehicle. They get back to the station, and he has some powder on his shoulder, and his buddy said, "You got something on you?" And he goes like this. But when he did, it absorbed transdermally and also inhaled it. And it took 6 doses of Narcan to save him, and his buddies had it. So they saved his life.
So it don't take very much at all.
It doesn't take, it's micrograms. If you think of fentanyl, and micrograms, they tell us it takes about 6 micrograms, or 6 granules, about the size of 3 grains of rice. That's what they have told us, of fentanyl to overdose you. And then if you think of another drug that's out there that we just had a death from an overdose called carfentanil. I don't know if you've heard of carfentanil. Carfentanil is an elephant tranquilizer. Virginia had their first overdose. It's an elephant tranquilizer. It took 3 micrograms for that to kill somebody. So
Where would you get elephant tranquilizer?
China.
China.
Yeah. And fentanyl is 100 times more powerful than morphine, but carfentanil is 1,000 times more powerful than morphine. So it's cheap. It takes less. You got the opportunity to make a lot more profit.
And you really have to think about how that gets in this country.
Yeah.
It comes in through the mail.
Through the mail.
It comes in
like
through
there'd
the
be a
mail.
way to regulate it.
It is.
Do what?
I said it looked like there'd be a way to, you know, catch, even if you catch some, whether it be like a dog or something.
Well, dogs can get overdosed too, and that's something we talked about today. You don't want to put a dog. The dog can detect opioids, and it can detect a synthetic opioid.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're risking your canine that costs $6,000. So, or however much it was, 15, whatever it took to train them. So you've got to be very careful. But you can use Narcan on a dog too. Yeah, you can. They actually had a lady on the news, I don't know, it's on NBC News or something. Her dog had gotten a hold of her hydrocodone, which she'd had a tooth pulled or something, and ate the bottle. And she just scooped the dog up, put him in the car, and noticed he was getting sicker. So she flagged down a police officer, and they have to have Narcan. And so they saved the dog. So it's that you could use for dogs. But trying to get back to the synthetic part of it, when you're dealing with the micrograms, and I said the carfentanil, it's like 3 grains of salt compared to 3 grains of rice. So that's what can overdose you. So that's getting into our country through China, also through Mexico. And we know those countries just love us. And, you know, they actually, to me, it's like warfare. They've actually used that years and years ago. Found out today they were telling us that Russia actually used fentanyl when they had a bunch of people that had taken hostages in a movie theater, and they piped it in, and they ended up killing everybody, hostages and the hostage takers. So it killed more people than they planned. They thought that would work. And it could be used again against us. So it travels in your mail. We've seen packages, and it looks like you get something from Amazon or whatever. But they are ordered off the dark web, and they get it. UPS truck drivers bring it to your door, or go to the post office and get it. And what they do is then they'll have home labs that they'll set this up in, and they'll do their mixing and their weighing or whatever. Well, if they do it out of the same bowl, today we saw a picture of a Tupperware bowl, and it had a little bit of this and a little bit of that in it, and they had like a scale. But everything in that house had been so contaminated that once the officers went there and saw that, they pulled everybody out because it's airborne, and if you walk, you could stir it up. So they have to put hazmat suits on to go in and decontaminate a house like that. It's very dangerous for law enforcement. It's very dangerous for all of you all too, and you're working in the medical field. You know, if somebody comes in your office and they demand a certain kind of drug or whatever, and they don't get it, they could take it out on whoever at the office. So that's something we're seeing a lot more of, is the violence in doctors' offices, hospitals, and pharmacies. So you see a lot of that. So what's going to happen is we're clamping down on the opioid pills. And opioid pills are basically the biggest problem in Southwest Virginia, and they always will be. It came through years and years and years of, years of them pushing OxyContin and hydrocodone and those types of things. So people got addicted. So what's going to happen now is they're going to clamp down on that drug, and it's going to be harder for people to get. So they're going to look for alternatives such as the fentanyl or anything else they can get a hold of. I'm going to do the lay rescue trainer with you guys, and we'll go over the things, and we'll just kind of flow into it. Everybody gets one of these, so I'm going to go ahead and pass these out. This is Revive kits that the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health Services has provided free to you all since you're taking the class. In it, it has some PPE stuff you got. You'll have CPR masks, and you'll have gloves in there, and I think I got everybody. I think that's right. I may have counted a little bit more than the next one. And we're going to go over that too in a second, but you can see that you've got that and you can keep your Narcan in that. After our class today, I'm giving you all a card, and you all already have one of these things from VDH. Okay, that's fine. You'll have this paper from VDH, and you can go to the Wise County Health Department. They'll give you 2 free doses of Narcan, valued at $150. You may not need it. If you want to go get it and donate it to your police department that's certified, that's fine. If you don't want to get it, that's fine. So we are certified. Don't give it to a police officer that's not certified because they need to go through the same class to learn this too. Okay? I'm going through my PowerPoint fast because I know you guys have a lot to do also. You're going to learn how to respond to an opioid overdose emergency. How many of y'all have CPR? Earlier said everybody good. So I'm going to get my dummies out. That's good. And that's something when we are responding to a call, we have AEDs and we are first aid CPR certified. So that's for most law enforcement. Everybody that graduates from the academy has to go through CPR within the first year. Okay? Revive was developed by a lady called Amira Turner. She works for the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health Services, and they also got a grant to buy all these kits. So anytime that I have a class, they send me the kits for free. So that's good. Okay? And our objectives are to understand what your role is. And if you guys have a question, I'm really informal. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Okay? We're going to talk about how naloxone works and some of the risk factors and things that you need to be aware of in the event that you have to administer to somebody. Okay? And I don't know how to do. I don't think I've got my link on that one.
Is this the grandparents in the car with the baby?
Yeah. Have you shown it?
I have. I've seen it.
Okay, let's just go to the next one. I'll be wrong.
Well, I've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Has everyone seen that? The grandparents passed out in the front seat.
And the baby's in the back in the car seat. Yeah. They're actually waiting in line at the school and they're passed out.
They're passed out.
So they shot up heroin in their arms. Okay. Terry McCullough declared a public health emergency, which allows us to have Narcan without a prescription. That anybody can go to a pharmacy and pay for Narcan without a prescription. And actually, what it also gives them the opportunity when your doctor prescribes your opioids for pain or for surgery, they can counsel you and give you information about it. They may even write you a prescription for Narcan because there are some doctors that can do that. If you have insurance, they'll pay for it. It's generally about $79 a dose. Okay? We actually, this is what you guys are going to be getting, and this is nasal Narcan. And I'm going to pass it around so y'all can look at it because this one I already squirted for a class. And it's just like nasal spray, you know. It actually has a little vial that has just that much medicine. It's 4 milliliters. And you just squirt it up your nose. So I'm going to pass that around. That way you can see the box. And that's what the officers in this area have too. So you can get your free Narcan, okay? Of course, this is a House bill that allows you to do that. It also provides immunity from civil liability. If you are a good Samaritan and you see somebody that's overdosed and you administer Narcan, you can't be sued because it's going to work if they're under an opioid overdose. If it doesn't work, they didn't have the opioid on board, or you may need another dose. So it's going to buy some time till rescue gets there, or we're going to get there first with ours. And some people it may take a little bit longer. Rescue firefighters, other people can administer this, okay? Private citizens can too, all right? So also allows for safe reporting. So if they're at a house and a couple people are there together and one of them overdoses, doesn't mean that we're going to go to that house and bust everybody in the house. We're going to investigate it. We're going to, okay, we're glad you're here, but one of the things you got to do is you need to stay with that person and you need to cooperate, and then we'll work with you. Hopefully we won't have to charge you. But if we go in and we find drugs, yes, we're going to have to charge somebody. If they're actively trying to assist us in the investigation, we're going to work with them. That's the best thing that we can do. Okay? How does it happen? Excessive amounts of opioid and other substances causes the body to shut down. Well, what it does is it causes your lungs to shut down. So you basically, you know, you can't breathe. and you quit breathing. Or it's so labored, it's just 1 or 2 times a minute. If you've never heard the death rattle, it's something you don't want to hear, but the death rattle is something you're going to hear because they are just so relaxed, their body's so relaxed. They'll slow down so much, they basically quit breathing. Short video talks about how somebody becomes addicted and about overdose. And this goes along with Revive program. Thank you, Jay. Sort of a juvenile way of showing the
That's
process of
probably one of the
addiction.
best videos I have ever seen.
It sells it. I mean, that's how it
Yes.
starts. You know, they see something, they're interested, and they get the high. And as their life goes on, it takes more of the drug more frequently to get any amount of high. So, you know, when you're talking to classes, when I'm talking to their classes or whatever, they talk about somebody gives you some medication and you may not think you're going to get addicted to it, but the first time you take that medication, there's a change in your body. If you had pain or surgery or anything like that, you've gone for it before and had some pain medication, it makes you feel better. And pain is considered another, what do they call it? What is it? More than other.
Your endorphins.
Right. It's considered something else. There's like things that you're assessing a patient. I've lost a word, guys. I've been up so long today. But anyway, what it is when you're assessing a patient, pain is actually what we're considering something, you know, with their vital signs. It's actually another one of their vital signs. Is that right? Am I saying that right? With the vital sign? Sort of that they're looking for?
It is one of the vital signs, and it's probably one of the worst things that could be added to the whole patient assessment routine is
the smiley faces.
Smiley face, and then you've got the 9 or 10 levels of pain.
Yeah. And so when they look at the vital signs, that, you know, they're looking at, are you in pain? And a lot of people know that, the vital sign. So that's why they go to the hospitals to get the pain medication. But also you see it takes more, it takes its wear and tear on the body. So if you know somebody that's addicted, they look older, got more wrinkles, sometimes they lose their teeth, and that happens. In our region, our biggest drugs are still the synthetic narcotics and the pills, but we are still getting things like the meth come in. We have had some heroin in Miles County recently. We had some black tar heroin back in the spring that was taken off of an individual doing an undercover buy. And the drug task force said that the lab called them and said that this is some of the most pure heroin, black tar heroin that they had seen in 10 years. And it was in Wise County. So somebody gets this black tar heroin and they don't know what to do with it, and they mix it up with stuff, or they cut it down the wrong way. People are overdosing. People are overdosing on the heroin because now they're mixing the fentanyl with it. So that's why we're seeing more and more overdoses. There's fentanyl powder and there's heroin powder, so they don't always have to melt it down and inject it. They can snort it now. So whatever they choose to do. How can you tell if someone's just high or they're overdosed? Any suggestions? Huh? Got one side.
Oh, and just their speech.
For speech. Probably slurred.
Slurred.
Huh?
Their heart rate and breathing.
Their heart rate and breathing. If they're talking, they're probably just high. They're not overdosed. If somebody's overdosed, they're probably not talking, are they?
I would say sweating.
Sweaty, okay? So here's some comparisons, and you actually have that in your PowerPoint if you want to look at it. You can write notes in it, it's yours to do, whatever. If somebody's really high, their muscles become relaxed, okay? But if they're overdosed, in comparison, they're pale, clammy skin. Have you seen somebody with diabetic insulin problems that they may have?
Oh,
So
yeah.
they get gray and sweaty, and it's similar to that. Yeah. So you get that type of feeling. They're pale, they're clammy. Their speech is slow and slurred. Comparison to breathing is infrequent, or it stopped completely. So, and really high, they're sleepy looking. And if they're overdosed, they're snoring. The death rattle that we talked about. If they're really highly responsive, they may respond to shouts or wake up or shaking them or pinch their earlobe or do a sternal rub. But overdose person, you can do everything to them. Like the sternal rub is very effective. Pinch their earlobe or pull it. Whatever you do, and they're not responding. So you know for sure they're not responsive to the stimuli. And there's other things like they'll have blue lips and blue fingertips because of the lack of oxygen. Now the way Narcan or naloxone works, it binds to the opioid receptors in the brain, okay? And what happens, the opioid receptors, once somebody's taking an opioid, it binds to those opioid receptors, but then the Narcan is administered, it knocks them off temporarily. So it knocks the opioid off the receptor temporarily. And when I mean temporarily, you're talking about 30 to 45 minutes, and they can go into a secondary overdose. So our officers, we just were donated our Narcan, and we only had enough for everybody to have one dose. We probably should have more, But we have a policy that if we have an overdose call, we have 2 officers respond. So we've got backup dose, plus we've got backup. If they come around, they may not be too pretty, and they're not gonna like us being there. So they may have to have backup for that. So temporarily, it's gonna knock it off, okay? Usually in about 2 minutes, the Narcan will work. So if people administer it, you know, we have just a very few minutes before they're gonna have some major brain damage. 2 to 3 minutes, they're gonna have some brain damage. So our response time is very important. If it has no effect, they probably have not ingested an opioid, or if they've ingested so much, it's going to take more doses. So how do you find out? You give them a second dose. If the second dose doesn't work, if you have the rescue squad there, if they give them a third dose, and all of the signs are that's probably an overdose, let them handle it. They'll give them a third dose. They'll punch it through an IV, so they'll get it too. So if it may take 6, 7, 10 doses, especially if it's fentanyl. So they may have to get more Narcan on board. Some of the risk factors that make people more likely to overdose on opioids. What are some of the risk factors in Wise County, Southwest Virginia? Is that, how about economics?
Depression.
Depression. Prior use. They're addicted to
Yeah, I was just
something.
gonna say prior use. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
prior
probably one of
use.
the-
Those are risk factors. Some of the things that can happen is certain people are at higher risk. People just getting out of jail, you know, they probably were addicts when they went to jail. They might have taken 4 Lortabs at a time. They go to jail, they're clean for a year, they get back out and they start hanging out with the same people. Like, I used to do 4 Lortabs, they do 4 Lortabs and they're overdose. So it's like they gotta take baby steps, they can't go straight into that. So that's something that, you know, I think when they're doing re-entry programs, they're talking to them about that too. They gotta hang around those people, or they're gonna end up dead or back in jail, okay? People who use alone, they don't have somebody watching out for them if they have that death rattle or they quit breathing. They combine things, okay? They combine things like alcohol or other depressants. And I'm gonna tell you, stimulants do not cancel out an opioid. It doesn't work that way. So it can compromise your health completely. Somebody that's been an alcoholic or a drug addict for a long time, they've already got lung disease or they've got kidney disease, so they're going to be more prone to an overdose too. Some of the myths that you hear about overdose, something to reverse an overdose. What are some of the myths you've heard?
The one that's just crazy that I just cannot get over is injecting milk.
Injecting
I
milk.
cannot get over that.
That's in your PowerPoint too, but yeah, injecting milk, injecting salt. They say milk because it's thick, you know, and I guess somebody came up with that one. I don't know. They were probably high when they came up with that one. Don't put them in the bathtub. Don't put them in the shower. You know, you've heard that for years. Give them coffee for so much overdose, not overdose, but drinking too much alcohol. Or, you know, make them drink a lot of water, or put them in a cold shower, or whatever. Well, people try anything. They'll do the same thing. You can't put them in the shower because they could drown. They're only breathing 2 times a minute. And they can't roll their head over or get out of the water or whatever. So there's a lot of things that they could do that could cause harm and make it a lot worse. So the best thing is to call 911. When people are trying to wake somebody up to slap them, kick them, or whatever, and that's not going to work either. If they're not going to wake up with a slap, they're not going to wake up. Also, some things that make them a little bit more susceptible is we've got a lot of people with hepatitis A, B, and C. There's 80% of the people that are in prison at a regional jail are positive for hepatitis. So,
I didn't realize that.
yeah, it compromises their liver, it compromises their immune system. They used to test when they come to jail. They don't do it anymore because it's expensive. Why is it expensive? Because the taxpayers have to pay for the treatment. And the treatment's very, very expensive to get them through that. And the taxpayers have to pick it up. Go on through here. Some of the other myths that we talked about, the physical damage that they have can perpetuate, can make it easier for them to overdose. Not force them to eat or drink, injecting salt, like she said, milk, other drugs. Naloxone is the only effective response to an opioid overdose emergency. There's no other drug. Naloxone is all natural. It's all natural. It's organic. it can't hurt you. So if you're down and out and somebody thinks you're overdosed and they give you Narcan, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to kill you. If it doesn't help, what if you've got somebody you're responding to and you think they're overdosed, but it may be a diabetic shock that they're in? Because it looks similar to that, doesn't it? So you give them that, it's not going to bring them out of their diabetic shock, but it's not going to hurt them. If your baby gets a hold of your Narcan and eats it or squirts it in their eye, it's not going to hurt the baby. If your dog chews it up, the plastic might, but the Narcan won't hurt them, okay? So it's totally safe. And it's the only drug that can help with an opioid overdose. There's nothing else out there. So it's a chance. And why do we want to have it? Because, sometimes that one person might just need that one extra chance to decide that they want to become clean. It's a shame that we've gotten to this point that we have to carry it to protect ourselves and our community. But there are obvious cases that we've had to deal with in other areas that children have gotten overdosed because they've got a hold on dad's drugs, And I'm sorry.
In the nurse simulator lab, they actually have a case where the child has stepped on the parent's fentanyl patch, and so you have to go through that situation.
When I was starting this program, I actually contacted a police chief in Kentucky, and they were carrying the Narcan. And I was having a lot of push from my officers, because you guys, we do so many things, and officers are asked to do more and more for our communities. We carry AEDs, we know CPR, first aid, and we have to do these things. And we've got tasers, we've got guns, and our gun belts are getting thicker and heavier, and all the things that we are asked to respond to. And my guys were like, why? Why should we go help these people? This is a choice that they're making. Why should we put ourselves at risk with the hepatitis or the AIDS or whatever? But we had to look at it this way. And when the police chief told me, he said he had a guy that asked the same type of question. His question was, well, Chief, why can't we just log sort them out? And the chief said, listen, buddy, I paid a lot of money for all those tools on that gun belt you got. Consider this another tool. Those tools save somebody's life. This tool will save somebody's life. And my guys were still pushing. They weren't interested in it. And I sat in the class and taught them all. And it was just like they're rolling their eyes, or they weren't paying attention, or whatever. But then we started hearing things about them saving their own partners. And now they get it. They understand why. Yes, it can save them their own partners. What if they go home after they've helped with a drug bust and they're getting somebody's car and they have some dust on them, and the little baby comes up, Daddy, Daddy, picks them up like they all do, and the baby gets the overdose. When I talk to them, I tell them, when you've been out on calls and you know you might been around those drugs, take your clothes off outside. Bag them up, wash them separately, do whatever you have to do to protect your family, because you don't want to take it in your house. You don't want to wear those shoes, just like when you're in hospitals, you're walking in the blood, you want to disinfect your shoes, you want to wear covers, whatever you have to do. So now they get it, and I've got more of them on board now, so it didn't like me for a long time. Things that you want to do, you want to check for responsiveness. So if you come up to somebody and they're unresponsive, you want to shake them, you want to look, listen, and feel, just like you do in CPR. I'm not going to get the CPR dummy out, but you can watch the rise and fall of the chest, do the things like pull their earlobe, but do the sternal rub. If you've ever had a sternal rub, if you do it really, really hard, it hurts because there's lots of nerves in there, and that really hurts. So a sternal rub usually would bring somebody around. If it doesn't, you're in trouble. You definitely got to get the Narcan. If they're still like lethargic and are able to talk, but you see that they're in an overdose, they probably do need Narcan anyway. So, and there's signs around, and you know it's an overdose, or somebody that tells you it's an overdose. It would be okay, even if they're breathing and talking, because you know they're in an overdose. They could go out in a hurry. So it would be fine if you go ahead and give it to them before they get totally unresponsive.
And it's not going to hurt them.
No, it's not.
If it's not an opioid or a synthetic, it's not going to hurt them.
It's not going to hurt them. That's right. So it may take extra doses, but you go ahead and get them on it before it knocks them completely out. because then you don't have much time. Or if they fail and hurt themselves, you don't want those things to happen. It could be accidental, it could be somebody that's gone through surgery or had a toothache, or like I said, it could be somebody's grandmother that you're trying to help. Okay, so basically what you're going to do is in your kit, you're going to use your CPR mask. These CPR masks are not the best, but that's what comes with this kit. It's better than nothing. Now my guys say, I'm not giving them CPR, and this is what I told them, and I'll open mine so y'all don't have to. I said, listen, it's in our policy, you know how to do CPR, you know how to do AED. Now, Revive wants you to do the compressions. So you have this if you have to do rescue breaths. So basically use this. This is not 100% protective, but it's going to offer some protection for you. What you have to be careful and mindful of, if they snorted the drugs up their nose, that you don't put your mouth down there and get that in your mouth or in your eyes or whatever. So you've got to be very careful that you cover their nose and you put this in their mouth, and then you squeeze their nose and you make sure that you're able to get the breath. So also if they passed out and hit the ground, we had this guy pass out at the fairground. He evidently traded pills with somebody and he hit the ground, busted his nose. He probably wasn't going to be able to get anything up that nose, to give him a good airway, so you have to breathe through their mouth and give them some airway. But they ask that you give them 5 chest compressions, okay? 5 compressions in 15 seconds. So you want to do that, and you've got to do the compressions. And you check and see, are they breathing anything different? If not, just keep doing it. It's 2 rescue breaths and 5 compressions. 2 rescue breaths, 5 compressions. Maybe 3 rescue breaths, I'm sorry if I missed that one. 3 breaths. And 1 breath every 5 seconds.
That also keeps them from throwing up in their mouth too.
Yeah, that's good too. So you're doing the chest compressions, so you give them 3 breaths. Okay. So you want to call 911. If you have to leave that person alone, definitely call 911 so there's an ambulance on the way, another backed up person with Narcan deputies on the way or whatever. Because people go to the doctor's offices and they'll come in and they'll overdose in the doctor's office. You don't know what they've had before they got there. Okay? And you also want to give the address where you are, any landmarks, things like that. If it's a private citizen and they're in a drug house, our guys, when they go in, we say, be careful what you do, what you kneel down on. You might kneel down on a needle. You've got to kind of look around and see what's around. But you all will be in the offices, so if that happens. But does anybody else work part-time, like for the rescue squad? Do you still work for the rescue squad? So you've been in some drug houses. You just got to be very, very careful what you do.
Yeah, we went in a place where they were doing meth, making meth, and a little baby was in his diaper one night. He was hooked. He was so good. Just from breathing it and walking it and stuff.
And then the long-term effects for cancers and other things because of the chemicals. So you have to be very careful. And you know to call the drug task force and they get somebody that's trained, a level A, somebody that's trained in level A to come and decontaminate. And that's what we learned today is they have to put the full suit on. Now, they could get just a little particle. When they're putting their suit on, there might be something in the air that they get it. So they're having to use a different type of Narcan, and I'm going to show you those in a minute too. Okay? After you do that, after you give them the 3 rescue breaths and the chest compressions, and they're starting to breathe on their own, you give them Narcan, and they're coming around. It may take 2, 5 minutes. It may take a second dose, and they start breathing. You want to roll them over to the recovery position, and it's just basically with their hands under their head like this and one knee bent. And you can tell me, why is it always the left side is the best side if you can?
That's, if I'm not mistaken, that's because your lefts have more lung. Actually, Tom can tell you this better than I can. You have greater lung capacity, or is that compromised lung capacity on the left side?
Well, I know that somebody mentioned something about regurgitate more on the right side than you do on the left side because of the way. But then,
let's ask Tom when he gets here.
But they always come in and sleep on my left side when I was pregnant. And I don't know why that was, but maybe it's because you have a better lung capacity. But but if it's the right side, it doesn't matter. You just want to roll them over so they won't roll face over in their own vomit. And that's the most important thing. Now, are they going to be all sweet and huggy, thank you, for saving life? No. They're going to be fighting mad because what happens is they're in automatic withdrawal. And withdrawal is painful. It hurts. Physically hurts. They're scared. They're panicky. They may come out swinging. We're gonna have cuffs. If they come out swinging, they're gonna get cuffed. We got back up there. If we have to hold them down, we'll have to hold them down. So in a situation that if it's a doctor's office and you all see that, you know, you want to make sure you keep them calm, keep everybody else out of the room. That's what we want to do. If there's people in the household, oh, my baby's not breathing and all that, you want to get them out because we don't know what they can hear. We don't want to get them upset. We want to calm the room down and keep it quiet as we can. Because the calmer we keep them, they're not stirring around. They're not getting their blood worked up. And so hopefully they won't go in that secondary overdose so fast. Okay, so that's just basically my favorite way to sleep anyway. So on their side, bend their knee, their top knee, to keep them from rolling over. That's a good thing for you to do. And you have that in the manual too, so you have to review that. Continue to rescue breathing if they're not breathing, as long as you have to tilt their chin back to open their airway. And of course, you're going to look to see if anything's in there. If they've got anything in their mouth, to do a finger sweep with the gloves on. If you have to do more rescue breaths, you can do that. If you're apprehensive and there's a family member there, let them do the rescue breaths. That's my feeling. We have ambu bags, so there's no really need for any of our deputies to do rescue breaths. They can use the ambu bags, so that's what they have to do. Also, I'm going to go into the different types of Narcan, and you all saw the one nasal Narcan, and this is another nasal Narcan. This is a cheaper version. This version is $79 dose. Okay. And you'll get 2 doses in there.
So cardiac output.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
30% more.
How many percent?
30%. As much as 30%.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one is a cheaper version, and this is just a trainer, so I'm going to pass that back so you can throw this back to the next row. Okay. So when you're opening this, I want you to look at it. So I know you rescue squad people and nurses, you all pop the caps off like this. The medicine's in this one here, and then you just put the syringe down on. Now they used to give us a little nipple cap that would go in there, but they had those recalled, so you're not going to want them there. So you don't really have to have an aerator. That's going to squirt just like anything else. So you just feel it plunge in there, okay? And it holds 4 milliliters. And they say you can do 2 milliliters in one side of the nostril and 2 in the other, but it doesn't matter. All 4 in one nostril works for me. So you're also going to kind of look and see if there's any residue. You don't want to push that residue on up in there. You want to put it in the clean nostril if they've got one, okay? So I'm going to pass this around, and I want you to kind of practice on just how to pop those off really quick and then put it together. Now mine doesn't have any liquid in it because when I use these for classes, I forget to put liquid in it, and it's time to do it. There's another one that's called the auto injector. This is called the Evzio. Pass this around. That one right there is about $39 a dose.
This trainer contains
yep, exactly. So you're gonna pull it out.
This trainer contains if you are ready to use, pull off red safety guard.
So you pull the red.
Please not ready to use outer thigh, the outer cage, and hold in place for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Injection complete.
Okay, this is called the Evzio, and this trainer would be good, or this actually loaded with medicine. This is not loaded with medicine. Would be good if you are a drug enforcement person and you've got one of those big suits on, and you want to inject the same medication. That's Evzio, 2 doses of Evzio, $3,800. We can't afford that. So we're looking at grant funding to get some just in case we have to have that. Because if they have the protective suit on, we don't want to lift their hood up or their ventilator off, squirt some up their nose, because what we're going to do, we're going to make it even more dangerous. We're going to be stirring up that powder, so they're going to be at bigger overdose. So they're looking for these. Tassel County has those for everybody.
Tassel County?
Tassel County. They got a grant for it, so he's getting some information so we can get some of those. But I mean, people that have insurance can get them. Basically, they just have to pay their copay. So that's something that they can get. The ones that we got from the health department are a Dak Farmer brand. Same medication, naloxone. It's just like the EpiPen, how outrageous they are. What's the price on them nowadays?
Oh my God, well, the guy who jacked up the price went to prison.
Right.
So,
It's still
last
like
time I checked,
$900.
it was like, last time I checked, it was like $1,000.
Yeah.
Close to $1,000, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And I'm allergic to seafood, and I can't even afford to get it myself, so.
So I don't eat seafood. I
Um,
am too, actually, so.
yeah, yeah. But that is another resource that we have, so, you know, if that's something you see. So now you guys know how to administer all 3 types of Narcan. So that's basically what you all need to do. You actually have in your kits, you have a card that deals with the one that I showed you with the screw on. And it shows the aerator, so just ignore that part because that little aerator is no longer used. And the reason it's not used, it was failing. It wouldn't allow it to mist. So you can get the mist just the same way, okay? Now they give this out at the Ram Festival. They give them a quick review and hand them 2 doses in one of these and send them on their way. They gave out like 600 doses last year. I don't know how many this year they gave out, but they gave out a lot of it. Once you've administered Narcan to somebody, you give them 1 dose of Narcan, you give them a sticker. And the reason you do that, because when they go to the hospital, the doctors need to know that they've been administered Narcan. If you have to do 2 doses of Narcan, you give them 2 stickers. 2 stickers. And they say not to put it on their head because if they're sweaty, it won't stick. Actually, the best place to put it is in their hair if they've got any. So it'll stick in their hair. So if you put it on their clothing and the rescue has to come and cut their clothes off, it might get lost. Of course, you won't tell rescue who administered the Narcan, but they'll share that with the hospital. Okay. Any questions with this so far? Anybody got a question?
I just have a question about EMS. So, you know, we had the conversation about when EMS picks up someone here and they take them to Kingsport. Kingsport actually logs that. The hospital will log it over there. Did we ever get that put in, that we have those 2 spaces on the EMS record that we can actually log?
I talked to the EMS council. I talked to them, and they said that they do have that already. They do already notate that. And you may say, I don't know if you have paperwork that you all administered Narcan. Do you do that?
We've been on the state sheet
So it's reported through EMS. Now, how the hospital is recording it, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But EMS is recording
Yeah,
it.
I know Dr. Cantrell, I think you were there that day.
Yes, yes.
It was way back, and she was saying that she wanted to actually make sure that if it was administered in Virginia, that it was noted and recorded that it was provided in Virginia so we could keep up with our statistics.
Yes.
So we would know how many overdoses that we actually had. Because it looks like the numbers are higher in Kingsport or in Bristol when they're actually our numbers.
Our numbers. And that was something I checked with Greg with, who's over the Southwest Virginia EMS Council.
Yeah.
And I'm on the crisis response team with him, doing debriefings, and I actually called him after I talked to her.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, they are noted on their paperwork.
Okay.
And that's turned over to the state. So,
Okay.
but one of the things, in order for us to get that information, and also for us to get more Narcan, we have to say we use it.
Yeah.
So when we use it, we have a reporting form that we send out. So we use it, plus the hospital and the ambulances use it. So they'll get all those doses reported. And there's going to be a lot that we're not going to use. It's something we hope we never have to use, but just in case, one of those things. You know, we've got 13 bullets, 15 bullets, whatever in your gun. We hope we never have to use them, but we've got extra just in case. So this is just in case. This is a video that we're not going to use that. It's basically how to administer the Narcan. Nowadays, they have a lot of volunteer agencies that addicts can come in and they can exchange needles for harm reduction to keep the hepatitis and the AIDS out of the community. And they actually have Narcan in these facilities, so it's offered for those people too who volunteer to administer it to individuals. This is the Ezio that we just went over. It's very self-explanatory. It's very easy. You can't really screw that one up. Only thing is when you do a baby, you have to squeeze their little leg together, give them enough fat. Some of them got fat, chunky legs that you want to squeeze it together to give it, so it won't hit the bone. You don't want to hurt them, okay? This, of course, is the nasal also. You get 4 milligrams in that. After you've done this, if they're not breathing, go back to doing the rescue breath and CPR, okay? It may take them a while, 2 to 3 minutes, so you want to continue. If they recover, you monitor them until emergency medical services arrive. If they don't recover, you give them a secondary dose, okay? They could go into another overdose in 30 to 45 minutes, even if they go to the hospital, but they'll be at the hospital. So usually by 30 to 45 minutes, they're at the hospital, hopefully. That will be the case, okay? You just want to assess them as you go, talk to them, try to keep them calm. Withdrawal is not life-threatening, but it's going to feel like they're going to die. They're going to have that fear, I'm going to die. Just try to keep them calm. If you have to restrain them, you have to restrain them. They do at the hospital. Sometimes, and I have been told that some doctors and ERs will have them strap them down before they administer that naloxone. So, and because they know they're going to fight. If you ever get on YouTube, if you want to put overdose, Narcan administration, you want to look at that and see how people respond, because it's different every time. And it could be that they curl up in a ball and they're vomiting, so you've got to deal with that too. Okay. If they don't respond within 3 minutes, give them a secondary dose again. Keep that assessment going. If they relapse into a secondary overdose, if you're still with them, you know, you've got that secondary Narcan, you want to have that on board. It can actually wear off before 30 minutes, but that depends on how much they've had. This deals with the stickers. You guys are going to have that. You know, you want to make sure that you do some things. Now, I'm not going to call y'all up here to do the sternal rubs because you know the CPR, but the sternal rubs are something that's important. You've all checked with the atomizers and you check with the LPO, so you know how to do that. Does anybody have any questions about those different types of Narcan? Which one did you all like best? Nasal spray. It's one step. It's easier. So you're out in the field and you're shaking, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what have I got to do? And what if you drop the one that's glass and you made a food down or whatever? So I think it's safer for anybody administering, and it goes in the trash. It goes in the trash, so you don't have to bag it and tag it and take it and dispose of it some other way. It goes in the trash. So
How do you feel comfortable enough that you have it where it needs to go?
Yeah, it won't go too far,
Yeah.
and it's just enough, so it's really easy. Okay. Any questions or concerns that you all have? So you guys are going to be doing coding. Are you going to be working in the offices?
Well, I mean, it could be hospital, it could be clinic, it could be that, you know, maybe they don't, you know, health information management is actually very broad. So coding is just one part of health information management.
So you could actually do home visits, right? Is there something would they be doing home visits?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we would be seeing the patient's charge.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
If we were in a coding situation, we would be seeing the patient's chart and looking at the chief complaints, signs and symptoms. We would be looking at physical exam. We'd be looking at medication administration. If we were in data analytics, we would be looking at population health and instances of, like with EMS, how many overdoses of X, Y, and Z as opposed to A, B, and C, and how many instances were nasal naloxone, that type of thing. Yeah.
So would you be in contact with patients?
Could possibly be, I guess, if you're in registration.
How many of you all go to school events? How many of y'all go to ball games? Kids, ball games.
I think
You know,
citizens.
how many of y'all could be, you know, in Gatlinburg and you see somebody that's passed out, you know. You carry this with you, you have it just in case. And, you know, once you have this knowledge, you can't really erase it from your head. You feel like you've got to help somebody. You have kids, how many of y'all have teenagers and little kids? Go to somebody's house and spend the night, or, you know, something like that might get a hold of something somewhere else. And with synthetics, and people have them at their houses. You know, when I taught there, I had a little boy bring marijuana to school. We were talking about it. I think he wanted to show it to me. It was his dad's. Unfortunately, he tried to sell a little bit of it.
He's an entrepreneur.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, it was his dad's, and the sad thing was I had to kick him out of there. That's the rule, you know, how we have to do it. But I hated it for him. But he actually got moved from the home, got put in a place in foster care. But you know, there are all kinds of ways that your kids can be exposed and you could be exposed. You have to prepare for that. I hope you've gotten enough information that you can do your paperwork and all that stuff, but you all have the VDH form. If you choose to go get you some Narcan, you just fill out the basic part with your information and have it ready so they'll sign that out for you.